Hey, how are you? Good. Well, thank you for talking. In trouble? No. When I work with managers, it's important to talk and set up time and regularly meet to see how I can help you, help your team. And so, yeah, those emails reminded me it'd be good for us to start setting up time. Yes, because in those instances, like emailing the employee and saying, this is an HR issue, looping in HR to take care of this, when it was like delivering bad news or for performance conversations, when you emailed me and asked me to talk to your team members about their performance. And so overall, I thought it would be helpful for us to talk and just for me to give a perspective of why it can be helpful for employees to hear maybe more information from you as their direct manager, but how I can help so that you're not just taking on that work. Yeah, I'd be happy to. I mean, I want to hear your perspective as well. This isn't a lecture. This is, I know a lot of times, well, let me just back up, is as a manager, had you gone through any people management training ever, anything like that? Like, I'd just like to get a sense of your background. And no, none. And that's super common, because a manager is not like some other roles where like you have to go through necessarily a certification. And so some things that I've learned over my career are, as a manager, you may be focused on, well, like, what are your goals? Okay, so those are really like sales, performance, all of those things. Yeah, it's hard to find time in the day. But as a manager, one thing that can be helpful to learn is the things that you can do that may not seem related to that or may seem like HR things, but that you can do that help in those areas, that help to drive that performance, but also help your team decide, like, okay, do I want to stay here? Do I want to leave? When I show up to work, do I feel like I want to work? And so some of those aspects that may feel like squishy, yes, that's an HR word, but can really lend into a lot of the things that are your like on paper goals as well. So overall, have you heard the term employee engagement? And to a lot of people, please, no, you don't need to apologize. It sounds like mumbo jumbo, because if you're like, what does that actually mean? Like, when you're working with people day in, day out, you have things like, you're not, thinking about buzzwords and talking like that. But what engagement can mean is you literally what I just said, like your team members, like when they show up to work. Okay, so that's their account. As they talk to they're getting on a call. Like, no, I probably don't, you're right. Probably don't need to do this. But like, okay, like what tone of voice are they using with prospects? How are they following up? Are they thinking about starting ideas? Do they feel like they can share best practices among the team? Or do they feel like they need to hoard them because they're worried that if others on the team do well, it will like dampen down their success? Yeah. Well, a lot of what I try to bring up is things that you may not have thought of just because, like, as you have a lot of things on your plate, these are things that I work on day in and day out. But so this idea of engagement is basically how your employees, like how motivated they are to like what kind of job they want to do. Like, do they care? And how are they talking to each other, to the team? And so, and then retention is like how likely they are to stay or leave. So as you think of like your top performers on the team, like, okay, what would you do if they left? Cry. Okay. Okay. Well, we'll try to prevent that. But your top performers or other performers, like, what do they need? So a lot of my job is helping to think about different ways that you can support them without adding hours of your work. Often what I try to do is help you take that away. But so in some of these instances, some of the things like for example, if you have an employee and you say they have performance issues and you send me an email to me and you talk to them. Okay, but let's put ourselves in that employee's shoes. So they come to work, they're not engaged. Okay, not engaged. So, but if all of a sudden they're sitting there and I set up time with them and I'm telling them, hey, you're not performing like we'd expect, what's that thought likely going to be? Yeah, I mean, it's probably going to be like, who are you, HR? I don't even know you, aside from like resetting my ADP password, which I do try to build relationships with employees. But I don't know you. Like, why is this coming from you? You don't know my job. And so oftentimes the conversation, like that kind of surprise conversation, can start off like on the wrong foot, and people can be defensive and not hear it. And they may say things, and I'll say, okay, so then I'm coming to you. Okay, what about this? And it's like a game of telephone. And at a certain point, we might all get together. But what can be more helpful is for me to help you to have talking points to deliver some of that feedback in a caring way. Yeah, I know it can feel awkward, uncomfortable, all of those things. Yeah, and you don't want to kick them while they're down, and I totally understand. But them hearing that message, the way they hear a message is going to be much different from you as opposed to me as HR. And so what I want to do is make that message heard the best, but also help you to feel the most comfortable in build those leadership muscles. Like an emotional bodybuilder. Oh, I hadn't thought of that, but that's my job. But just thinking about that from that perspective. In a lot of these situations, if something's happening, is you talking to that employee and reaching out to me and saying, like, how can this best be addressed? Because there will be some things that it's important for HR to deal with. Like, if it's a question about benefits, like there's people on our team that can answer those questions, connect them to the right people. But a lot of times when it's just something that's like about performance or a mistake or like, this, having HR have that conversation, you can almost think of it as HR being a playwright rather than your like best like lead or supporting actor or actress. So that's just overall, the message tends to be heard from you. Like people also use the term one source of truth, which may also sound like mumbo jumbo. But often what that means is like your employees are looking to you as the leader of their team. And so if they're asking, if they're needing things, or when it's a tough message, you're like passing that off to somebody else to have, candidly, it can make them think like, okay, well, what's their responsibility? And like, they can't have that conversation with me face to face. And that's just the perspective. But it's also the flip side for when good things happen. Like if somebody on your team has like a big sale, like you probably wouldn't have, you're welcome to have me. I'm happy to help deliver that message. But you're probably not going to say, okay, HR is going to congratulate you. Like it's so both the tough news, the good news, the recognition, people often want to hear from their manager more. Often people want to hear from their manager more than they are already. Unless it's like a micromanagement situation, but we can talk about that separately. But so it's just this idea of, as you're going through things with your employees, is that my role can be, you can reach out to me and we can set up regular calls, but also as things happen, you can reach out to me and I can help you. Like, okay, like I often see the same thing over and over again. And frequently I'll say, oh, here are talking points I have for this conversation. If the employee asks this is what you can say. And so I give those things to you, not so that you can say, oh, HR told me to say this, let me read it from a script, if it's like performance conversation. But it's for you to read and just how to have that more naturally, but to feel more confident in that conversation. Yeah, but, well, and at the end of the day, this isn't, I'm not a Pollyanna. Don't get, okay. It's not, I know there's going to be times where there are going to be people that leave. There are also going to be situations where we don't feel like the job is a fit. And so there's a lot that we can do. I have a lot of training and development ideas and examples of people that have turned it around. And so I'm happy to give those. So it's not just like put them on a plan for window dressing. We need to get rid of them. Like, because that's really not helpful for that employee or your team overall for you as a leader. But what can be helpful is for me to help you in those instances to have those ideas and set you up kind of as best I can. And if we're getting to a situation where it just doesn't feel like the job is a fit, how also you can have that conversation. Now, when should I be a witness? So that's a really great question and a common question. I wouldn't think of HR as a witness so much as a resource. And I mean that because in conversations, even if we are in a performance conversation, it's a formal plan of my presence being there, not to be like, this is a scribe so I can testify in court, but like, okay, what kind of questions? And give some of those examples of people turning it around. No, not by name, but to do that to motivate the employee. So yeah. Well, yeah, and I'm happy to answer any questions you have, and we'll set this up, but I just wanted to talk through why it can be helpful for you and what my role can be more as that playwright. Okay, well, I'm glad that resonates. I try to use that example. But yeah, whether it's tough news, good news, I'm here for you as that resource and to help you be the one to have some of those conversations. Okay. All right. Let me know. What questions?